Hi there. Are you prepared to immerse yourself in a tale that will touch your emotions and upend your preconceived notions about loyalty and love? Don't delay. Now is the time to immerse yourself in this compelling story and uncover an unknown reality. The unspoken line: when the rain began, he was already within her. The sole light in the guest room was a solitary bulb on the bureau, and the blackout curtains were tightly drawn to keep out the storm's wrath. Too little, too concealed, and too personal for the gravity of what they were doing, the walls closed in on them. With their knuckles white against the grain of the wood, his hands braced on each side of her. She pressed her fingertips into the linens. Before realizing how much she couldn't handle another one, she felt every inch of him. It wasn't an abrupt change. Until it wasn't, it was too cautious, sluggish, and silent. He was 25 and she was 41. Her spouse had enough faith in her to let her pack alone for a business trip. She had informed Andrew that although she had been asked to a client dinner, she would leave right away. He had said her farewell with a kiss and referred to her as his universe. She grabbed his face, smiled, and told a lie. It was too late when they apologized. As he went further, the rain pounded the glass like a warning, making his breath catch. Every nerve in her body was alive as her back arched on the mattress. Warm and persistent, his lips probed the hollow of her throat. To maintain the sound, she bit her lip. His voice cracked as he muttered, "Tell me to stop." She didn't. She wanted the stretch, the heat, and the hesitancy to go away, so she put her legs around his waist and drew him in. Her claws scraped his back as her palms squeezed against it. He shuddered. Guilt, desire, and fear are all mixed together in one shiver. The delicate hairs at the back of his neck were lit by the light from the bulb that was pushed on his shoulder. Thunder rumbled outside. Her heart pounded against her ribs inside. She shut her eyes. She tried to stop this by picturing Andrew's face. In order to recall who she was, she needed to think about her son. All she felt was his, yet she could sense the treachery in every damaged muscle and hollow groan she was unable to swallow. His hands cupped her breasts, moving up her ribcage. There he paused as though requesting permission. Breathless, she nodded. Slowly, with reverence, he lowered his mouth. Her toes curled as she clung to the mattress. There didn't seem to be any boundaries crossed. It was like taking a breath. They froze, eyes closed, breathing in unison, the storm forgotten, as he froze inside her for a single perfect minute. She believed she could say enough to stop him at that point, but the pain inside of her was too ancient and too intense. With his forehead on hers, he drew back a little. "Are you certain?" His voice wavered. "Yes," she muttered. He shifted once more. She gave him permission. If the one person who ever saw the true you was the one you weren't allowed to want, how would you respond? This was not what she had anticipated. She had no intention of wanting him, but in the shadows, every deliberate step of silence, every silent look, every unintentional touch, every lonely night spent waiting for a spouse who arrived home late and departed early, led to this point. This was unavoidable, not an error. They were plunged into near darkness when the bulb flickered and died. The gentle glimmer of lightning from the window illuminated his skin. The pain in her throat came from suppressing words she had never said. His hand moved down her side as she felt it. It was greeted by her body as though it had found something it had lost. He followed her till they both froze, shaky and worn out. Wait a minute. Decisions that alter everything are made here. See how this life-changing event changes her world by reading on. You won't be sorry. When she did speak, it was in a scratchy whisper. I didn't intend for things to go this bad. First he kissed her lips, then her collarbone. I don't. They listened to the rain taper off as they lay there in the silence that ensued. She forced herself to forget everything as she closed her eyes, but the weight of forbidden yearning made that first instant tremble. Because you can't unfeel what you just allowed to happen once you cross this boundary. She had gotten used to going through the mornings automatically. She would get up before the sun came up, sneak into the kitchen to make coffee and feed the dog, and then sit at the table with a single pendant light softly glowing above her. It was too quiet in the home. She would survey the spotless countertops, the framed family portraits on the wall, and sense the void between them. By then, Andrew had always left, heading to the workplace before the sun had fully risen. He would give her a quick, courteous, and whispered peck on the cheek. "Enjoy your day." He hardly ever looked into her eyes. She wouldn't even consider telling him that she felt more accepted by a boy who was 10 years her junior than by her spouse. Months ago, Jake received his own key under the guise of needing to drop off his rain boots or fetch coffee. When he asked for the key, he never mentioned it. She didn't inquire as to his intentions. Before it felt convenient and like just another little thing. He was never far away. Before the garage light flickered on in the mornings, she would hear the screen door click. Without thinking, she would put one cup on the workbench for him and pour the other two. He would show up wearing his dad's old flannel, his hair still wet from a run, and he would lean on the truck's hood, holding the mug as his breath curled in the chilly air. "Good morning," he said in a gruff voice. "Good morning," she would respond, getting up from her chair to stand next to him. Together, they would observe the driveway as the dark light caused steam to rise from their mugs. As they had done the day before and the day before that, they discussed nothing but the weather, the town news, and the neighbor's damaged fence. But more than any talk, she felt the weight of his attention at those moments. The electricity went out one afternoon. Under the brightness of a desk lamp, she was sorting mail in the home office at the far end of the corridor. The house fell black, with just the storm light flashing through the windows, when the light abruptly switched off with a bang. Before she saw Jake walk in, she heard his boots hitting hardwood. He remarked in a hushed voice, "I came by to check the breaker." She got up and brushed her hair away from her face. "Thank you." He squatted down near the fuse box, holding a flashlight. With softened angles and shadows created by his eyelashes, the tiny beam danced across his face. She watched him work, and when he looked up and saw her gazing, her heart skipped a beat. He flipped switches until the lights clicked back on and added, "It's no big deal." "No," she said, "it is." "Thank you." Their hands touched as he stood. Startled, she withdrew. He stiffened as though he had been suppressing it for months. As she lay in bed that night, she reflected on how easy it had been, just a touch, a flashlight, and a fuse box. Nevertheless, it had the weight of a confession. The residence was deserted 2 weeks later. Andrew spent the weekend away in Charleston attending a client retreat. His parents were with the children. She folded load after load of clothes while sitting by herself in the kitchen with the windows open to let in the fresh air. There was only the distant rumbling of traffic and the hum of the dryer. Her cell rang. Jake was the one. "Do you mind if I stop by, Jake? I've got extra fence paint." Her heartbeat accelerated. She replied, "Yes," then scowled. "If you'd like." After an hour, he arrived at the driveway with a truckload full of cans. Sky darkening, rain promised. Climbing out, he called, "We'd best move quickly." She reached for her coat. With a sense of approaching storm in the air, they made their way to the backyard. To paint the top rail, he scaled a ladder. As she handed him brushes and watched paint trickle down his forearms and onto his pants, she stood below. He climbed down after he was done. A whisper against the leaves was the first sound of rain. "Come help me finish," he murmured, pouring as he glanced at her. As he brushed the stroke, she moved forward, her fingers pressing over a rail. He brushed across her arm. She stopped. He remained in place. Overhead, the storm began. Sheets of rain fell suddenly. They sought refuge in the garage. Around the margins, rainwater is dripping in. She dropped the rail cover, he dropped the paintbrush. They were facing one another. They were both saturated. With his sleeves rolled up and drip spraying, he shook his head. "I apologize." "Why?" Her voice was strained as she asked. "For ogling?" She took a swallow. "For that, you don't have to apologize." Tilting her chin up, he drew closer. "Yes, I do." He paused with all they had been ignoring, and she could feel the silence in his voice. The light in the garage flickered. Behind him, the rain splattered. They were lonely and alone, gray shadows encased in temptation. She desired to retreat, to take a step back, to recollect her identity. But she didn't, since that was all it took for someone to treat her like more than a collection of duties and rituals for the first time in years. Every area of the house appeared charged by the middle of the week. It seemed menacing even in the little corridor. She slipped by to check on the washing machine, the carpet soft beneath her feet and the low light from the living room creating long shadows. She had a vague expectation that he would be there, resting against the wall. He helped his father finish landscaping for a new customer by working late most nights. When he returned at 8 or 9, the sound of the screen doors clicking reverberated around the kitchen. Pretending to read in the living room, she would sense him before hearing him, like static beneath her skin. She was folding linens in the laundry room one evening. Heat around her as the dryer buzzed. The door opened silently as she arranged pillowcases. He was standing there with boots pouring into the floor and rain on his hair. She simply let the heat to build up in her chest without raising her gaze. Then he whispered, "You should wait for that to cool before dealing with it." She turned with a pillowcase in her hand. She trembled her hand. With his umbrella dripping, he entered and shut the door. Immediately, the space seemed smaller. "I apologize," he said softly. "It was not my intention to surprise you." She said it's okay, but it wasn't. Not good. His fingertips brushed hers as he extended his hand to balance the basket. Beautiful, piercing energy flickered up her arm. As if he had burnt himself, he withdrew. They were silent as they stood there. The dryer thudding on wet towels was the only sound. She wanted to pull away, but she was unable to do so since he was too close. "You're soaking instead," she remarked. He glanced down at his shirt, the cotton darkened by the water. "I was caught in the rain en route." She went to the sink and swung the faucet. She poured water on her palms and his face was bathed in watery light. She instinctively stretched out and wiped his temple. His gaze shifted to hers, startled and exposed. Her heart thumping, she dropped the towel. The little chamber shut. It had nothing to do with apologies or decorum at the time. Too near, the distance between them thinner than the material of his shirt, it was about breathing. His voice caught as he blinked. "Are you chilly?" She took a swallow. It seemed like a permission question. She was chilly, yet she muttered no. His hand extended cautiously and gently as he moved forward. She remained still. Warm, steady, and genuine, he put his hand to her cheek. He was gone when she opened her eyes after they had drifted shut. The dryer continued to hum as if nothing had occurred, and the laundry room was deserted. She wondered how she would get through the time till he returned, since she knew he would and she would be waiting. Yet she stood motionless, her fingertips tingling where his touch had been. It took place in the studio in the basement. After removing her old yoga mat, she placed a folding chair beneath the lone exposed light bulb. She never got past the first box, where she planned to organize incomplete scrapbooks. The chamber was ideal for secrets since it had no windows, a low ceiling, and a smell of damp plaster and sawdust. He went down the stairs after her. Before he spoke, she heard his boots creak. She shrugged, her heart thumping so hard she could feel it in her throat. "Didn't mean to find you here. Need a peaceful setting." The only silence he was familiar with was perilous. She was also aware of that. As she switched picture after picture, he stood behind her, near enough for her to feel the heat of his body. Fading faces, old birthdays. She drew a wedding photo of Andrew grinning with his arms wrapped around her and his son behind them. He would never again gaze at her in that manner. Above them, rain drummed, the house shifting, or something else entirely. She put down the picture and turned. His eyes were black with need, his shoulders slumped, his shirt saturated from the drip of pipes overhead, and he was closer than the frame. She inhaled. "Are you chilly?" He paused a moment. Her thumb touched his jaw as she extended her hand. She felt the damp cloth as she flicked at his shirt collar. He shut his eyes. "You do it, but why? What are you going to do? You look after everyone else but yourself." She took a swallow. "They need me," therefore she was unable to look him in the eye. He took a hesitant, then confident stride forward. Grasping her waist with both hands, he led her back till her spine touched the wall. Her shoulder was chipped by the plaster. She didn't recoil. His voice was hoarse as he continued. "I need you." That was all that was required. Gently at first, then urgently. He leaned in and put his kiss on hers, overcoming caution. She could taste sawdust and rain, and she could feel his body pressing against her every inch, filling the aching she had carried for years and taking up space. Her fingers entwined as she reached for his hair, drawing him in. The chair made a scraping sound on the floor. As they fell to the floor, the light bulb flickered. Skin pressed against scratchy carpet, bodies crumpling. He had strained breath. She had a garment that hung up her legs. He hesitated, trying not to go too far, and she could feel the quiver in his hips. However, she needed him and needed it. He pressed his forehead to hers and said, "I'm sorry." "Don't," she said softly. "Please." He moved once again, slowly, deliberately, and not recklessly, as though I were valuable, delicate glass. With her claws digging into his shoulders, her back arched. Her heart was rocked by the actual warm pressure of him. The rest she forgot. Thunder rumbled. Rain drummed louder. The space seemed extremely cramped. She was aware that there would be a sea of old pictures and two individuals destroyed on a yoga mat when someone answered the door. She didn't care though. His breath was heated as he buried his face in her neck. Her voice was lost in the wind as she gulped. They lay side by side once it was ended, their bodies exhausted and their limbs entwined. Breathing easily for the first time in years, she stroked his collarbone. A wet curl was stroked from her cheek by him. "I'm unable to return," he said. Voiceless, she nodded. He planted a kiss on her collarbone. "I have no regrets," and she believed him for a second. Then she recalled reality when the streetlight flickered through the ceiling gaps. She gently pulled him away. His clothes stuck to his skin as he sat up. "I have to go," he said. She gathered her dress as she stood. He looked into her eyes, scared, hungry, and eager. They were unable to undo the timeless thing they had shattered in that instant. Without a word, he retreated toward the stairs. "Goodbye," she said in a whisper. His hand was on the railing as he halted. It was genuine tonight. Then he vanished into the night, and she sat by herself, her heart broken and filled at the same time, her hands shaking, her chest heaving. She went through her routine like a ghost the following morning. She got out of bed before dawn, slipped into her robe, and without thinking made coffee. There was a whistle from the kettle. At her feet, the dog pounded its tail. The only difference was that everything seemed quieter and infused with an unidentified attentiveness. She poured a cup and took it to the edge of the coffee table in the living room, where Andrew's laptop was open. She didn't sit where he did, and she didn't touch it. She simply stood in the doorway, watching the weak light creep across the hardwood floor while holding a cold cup of coffee. She was astonished to see her reflection in the glass. Her eyes must be too brilliant, her cheekbones hollow. Jake was in the basement, and she remembered how his body filled her, and how he said that he didn't regret it. Each time she blinked, his words reverberated. While the machine's constant hum filled the empty house, she folded clothing in quiet. Every towel she took up brought to memory his warm, rough hands. As she folded the linen, she believed she could sort through her emotions with ease, but the pain in her chest just got worse. Their schedules clashed despite her best efforts to avoid him. He mowed the yard once again on Thursday afternoon. She was pruning the front porch's rose plants. At the gate, their hedge clippers clashed. Blades half closed, he froze. "Sorry," he whispered softly. "I'll walk around." She pushed out, "But it's all right. Just use caution." She observed him as he nodded and moved around. His shoulders were tense, as if he wanted to reach out but wasn't sure whether he could. She told herself that she had accidentally left her door unlocked that night. However, the guest room's light was on and shadows were shifting behind the curtains when she returned home from supper with a friend. Her heartbeat quickened. After a moment of hesitation, she opened the door. They made the bed. He was nowhere to be seen. On the nightstand, there is just a folded towel. She touched the sheet with her palm. There was a slight fragrance of sawdust and rain on the towel. Her lips became parched. The remorse came in little bursts. The community center had a board meeting. She winced as she saw her image in a window. Rehearsal of the church choir. She grasped a hymnal for an excessive amount of time after dropping it on her foot. She found herself reliving the warmth of him in that shadowy spot at home as she traced the edge of the basement light switch. She took lengthy, aimless drives with the windows down and music loud enough to block out her thoughts since she didn't want to be in her own home. The roads became hazy, the sky became pink behind far-off hills, and she found herself at stoplights she didn't know. She could feel his echo everywhere she traveled. She made an effort to seem like nothing was wrong on Saturday. She and Andrew threw a cookout for their son's college friend who was staying for the weekend, as well as their neighbors and a few acquaintances. She laughed at jokes she didn't entirely understand while cooking on the porch, flipping burgers and stirring pasta salad. Jake claimed he needed extra fence paint and was late. With paint cans in hand, he hovered at the edge of the yard, his damp hair catching the late afternoon sun. He looked across the throng at her. He gave a quiet hello by lifting his chin. Her stomach churned. She approached. He shrugged, thinking it would be impolite to not come, but you didn't have to. She nibbled on her lip. Really, you can leave. Leaning in, he balanced the paint can on the railing. I'd prefer not to. All she could manage to say was, please don't make this harder. She wanted to beg him to get out, to run away, to put distance between them. He gave a nod and moved away, just enough to make them appear to be neighbors having a conversation, but not near enough to be comfortable. She scanned faces throughout the remainder of the afternoon. Beer bottles perspiring on the porch rail, laughing around the table, and Andrew embracing their son's buddy. They had no cigarettes, yet she could still taste ash in her tongue. She lay in bed that night, gazing up at the ceiling. The tiny glimmer of Andrew's phone on the nightstand when he checked his messages, his back to her, and his steady breathing. Her thumb brushed his forearm as she extended her hand. He stiffened, then eased up. Instead, she closed her eyes and saw Jake's hand there, warm and tentative, asking for permission. In the brush of her robe, she sensed his spirit. "What have I done?" she murmured into the night. No response. 2 days later, she discovered a little folded letter in his handwriting neatly tucked into her car's windshield. "I am aware that guilt is consuming you. This is not a question you must answer. I apologize for bringing you here." Her chest grew constricted. Her breath caught in her throat as she put the note to her heart. She had never felt the collision of guilt and want before. She wanted to rip it to shreds. She wished to protect it. "Don't be sorry for feeling," she wrote me in response. No response. At that moment, she understood that the secret would not disappear with time, shame, or unspoken apologies. It was now a part of her, entangled in her rituals and engraved into her pulse. And she felt him again each time she closed her eyes. It was shattered by the quiet before the weekend storm. The rain drummed restlessly in staccato on the roof while she sat at the kitchen table with a solitary light bulb above her. Hours ago, the dishwasher cycle was complete. Their home held its breath. Andrew had taken an impromptu business trip. Exhausted and contrite, he had said farewell with a kiss and vowed to call. Jake placed a letter on her car, which she unfolded. She could still hear his words behind her eyes. Glancing at the rain-smudged world beyond the window, she traced the ink with her finger. The main door made a clicking sound. She hadn't heard anybody come, but her heart jumped. She turned, gasping for air. Due to the bad weather, their son had to return home early from college. Rain was streaming down his hair as he stood in the doorway with his knapsack draped over one shoulder. Those 4 letters stiffened in her chest. Even though his voice was soft, "Mom." Wiping the letter into the pocket of her robe, she stood up. "How are you, honey?" He warned about the campus flooding. "I decided to ride it out here." She tried to grin. "I'm glad you did." After inside, he took off his jacket. The light in the corridor was faint, and there were lengthy shadows behind him. He stopped, glancing at the empty coffee mug, the lone note pinned beneath a glass paperweight, and the kitchen table. "Is everything all right?" he inquired. Guilt gripped her like a vice as she paused. It was just a lousy day. He remained still. It seemed like miles separated them at the table. His fingers brushed the damp ring on the glass weight of the note as he extended his hand. He said, "Mom, I found this in the driveway. I assumed it belonged to you." She took a step back and swallowed. "It's just nothing." His expression somber, he interrupted her. "Tell me whatever you want." His eyes reflected the same desperation she saw in her own. An appeal for the truth. She got closer. "Really, I'm all right." He didn't believe her, though. He didn't. He dropped the letter, exposed and unfurled, onto the table. Her tears and the rain had discolored the paper, but the words were still readable. "I am aware that guilt is consuming you. This is not a question you must answer. I apologize for bringing you here." He bobbed his neck. "Who is A?" Her chest grew constricted. The world swayed. Words intended for another guy are being read by her kid. Her tiny boy. She opened her mouth, but the crescendo of the rain was all she could hear. His voice trembled as he gazed at her. "What's happening on, Mom?" She drew a shuddering breath. "You don't need to know anything." He shook his head. "Nevertheless, I'm entitled to know." There was thunderous silence. Outside, white splinters of lightning shattered the sky. The wind made the house moan. It dawned on her then that the time had arrived. All of the unsaid looks, the snatched touches, and the need she had suppressed for years, they came together for this one encounter. She shut her eyes. It was an error. His expression dropped. "Who is it with?" She shuddered. Not able to speak it. Not to him. Not in this manner. His chair scraped the floor as he stood. "I'll find out, Mom, if you don't tell me." She went to the window after him. The window smacked with rain. She put the glass on her forehead. "It's someone I never should have wanted," she muttered, tears streaming down her cheeks. His eyes widened as he turned. "Who?" To resist seeing him, her adult son betrayed, she closed her eyes. She recalled Jake in the storm-ravaged cellar, the way his body touched hers, and the warmth she had never had with her spouse. She opened her eyes to find her husband standing in the doorway. "Andrew, arrive home early." Her confession hung between them as he heard his son's voice. Her look was one of embarrassment, his was one of anguish. Her son's eyes blazed with grief between them. She was unable to return. There was no summons from above. Only the broken stillness of a family reconfigured by realities hidden too long remained after the storm. There was no salvation. She extended her hand to grasp Andrew's. He gripped it tremblingly. With the door open and their son stepping back, Rain whipped his jacket. "I'm sorry," she said in a whisper. He didn't answer. He simply turned and vanished into the darkness. She felt every inch of what she couldn't change as she stood in the empty doorway, rain pouring in, the letter limp in her pocket, because it seemed like home for a second. For years, she kept everything under wraps. Everything changed the moment she expressed her demands and feelings. Perhaps that was incorrect. For a brief instant, however, it was. This narrative may evoke memories of thoughts you've held within, but were forbidden to express out. Don't think twice. To encourage more articles like this, kindly like and subscribe. The more you listen to these stories,